Hi, I'm Gareth Thomas and I'm here with Tackle HIV, and we are very lucky today to be here with a very special guest of mine and a really strong advocate for the HIV community, and that's Harry. Hello bud, how you doing?
Hello bud, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks man, you alright?
Yeah, very well, nice to see you, looking strong, looking healthy.
Mate.
You've always got a smile on your face. Everyone loves you.
I try. So I think a really good place to start is the relevance of this year, right? And the fact that 35, I can't believe it was 35 years ago, this year in April, your mother opened the first specialist HIV AIDS unit at the Middlesex Hospital in London. Now, in that length of time, do you, somebody who's taken on the advocacy, feel that much has changed? And when I say changed, right, I mean change. I don't mean so much progression to nowhere. I mean, has there been obvious change?
Well, that's so interesting that you're asking me that question, because I think people would far rather hear that from you. Like, this is, a virus that you know better than most is, or was, very much was a death sentence, and now it's a manageable disease, right? So in that respect, the way that we should be viewing it is totally different. Like, I wasn't around in those days when the I don't know whether you want to call them advertisements, commercials, whatever they were, but those horrible videos that existed, all over television, trying to basically completely polarize everyone who had the virus, or anyone who even talked about the virus, from everybody else. So I think what my mum did, and what so many other people did at that time, was to smash that wall down, to kick the door open and say, no, when people are suffering, then we need to learn more. And if there's stigma that's playing such a large part of it, then what we really need to do is talk about it more. And that kind of makes people feel a little bit, I guess, uncomfortable to start with. But stigma thrives on silence. We know that. So there's always going to be people or groups or other organizations who may have agendas to try and keep this out of conversation. But what my mum started all those years ago was creating empathy and understanding, but also curiosity. And I think that was really powerful, to be able to create that curiosity of, hey, well, we know nothing about this virus. Can we at least learn some more, rather than be so critical and so judgmental right from the beginning? So in that respect, I've seen huge change. People are able and happy to talk about HIV so much more openly, but the stigma still exists, and therefore the testing is still a problem.
Yeah, because when you talk about people being critical and judgmental, that creates a stigma, and as you said, I am somebody who lives with this virus, and a big barrier for me was this stigma, because I suppose the only thing that I ever thought I knew about HIV was what you said, these advertisements, this kind of polarizing of it back in the day. And it feels like, as a society, we should really all be celebrating how far medicine, how far science has come to allow people living with HIV to live. But there's still this element of fear to engage in a conversation around it, or to engage in the knowledge about it, because people feel that they're educated on this subject because of what they've been passed on in generations before, or what they thought they knew about it. So what I find is really difficult with this subject is to say to people, do you know what you thought you knew, forget about that. And it's really difficult to re-educate people around this subject.
Yeah, I think it's one of the hardest things in the world right now is unlearning, right? Look, I would say that the people that are trying to unlearn, or at least think they know what they know about HIV, actually is a very small number of people. I think the majority of people have a sort of blissful ignorance to it, because they don't feel as though they are within the at-risk group. And that's what I felt when I tested myself. Was like, look, I know that I'm not in that risk group. However, if me getting tested is going to make it easier for other people to be tested, also from outside of risk groups, then surely the people that were within those risk groups will feel more comfortable to be tested. So therefore, every single one of us has a duty, or at least an opportunity, to get tested ourselves, to make it easier for everybody else to get tested. And then it just becomes a regular thing like anything else. But if we're not getting tested and we're like, oh, HIV, that's not that, how could that possibly affect me? That's affecting, people over there. And it's like, no, it could affect you. But even if you're absolutely convinced that it won't, you should probably get tested, because then at least you know your status. That to me was the biggest sort of turning point for me, was like, just know your status. If you don't know your status, why would you not want to know your status?
Yeah. And did you find when you did, when you did the test yourself, did you find that worked? Did you find that people were actually getting more engaged with it? Because again, what I'm really passionate about, right? I really want change. I don't want progression to nowhere. I just think progression to nowhere is just an uphill struggle. You think, we're in a better place than we were 20 years ago. He says, okay, but I want change. I don't really want to keep being in better places. I want change. I want people to start understanding, which creates change.
One of my biggest fears is this is unfinished business, right? The medical community and the scientific community have what they've managed to achieve over the last 30 years has been extraordinary. But how extraordinary could it be by 2030, for instance, by the end of this decade, that within the UK alone, we could be in a position where there are no new HIV cases by 2030. Those are the kind of goals that we have to strive for, but that we also have to complete. Otherwise, as I said, it's unfinished business, and all that work that my mum, that people that you know, people that I know, people that everybody else knows, all that stuff, all that passion and energy that we put into finding or creating medication in the first place, smashing the stigma and being able to make people feel more comfortable so they can actually manage the virus and have a healthy, happy life. That we've saved, those groups of people have saved hundreds of millions of lives, without doubt. But I'm with you, Gareth, we can't just have this incremental increase in knowledge. There has to be real change, so that we, as our generation, though you are way older than me, so we're definitely in a different generation. But they are.
I got bigger guns than you.
But the fact is, we need to be the last generation to be confronting this the way that we are. I think we have to try and get over that. And it's okay, man. I really struggle with the amount of sort of global issues that occur, and when we have an opportunity, because of the amount of work, effort, and funding that's been put into finding the solution, that we don't finish the job. We have to finish the job, and the impact that will have across the world. It's like then everyone can give themselves a pat on the back, and then I would feel a huge sense of pride that my mum and so many of her generation started something incredible, which already is down in the history books. But what are we going to do now? What can we do now? This is a question to you. What can we all do? What can the people watching this? What can we collectively do that is going to increase the chances of destroying stigma once and for all, raising the awareness and the knowledge of HIV as a virus, and getting people out there to feel more comfortable about knowing their status?
Yeah, because on that, I think it's about having that knowledge to empower yourself to be able to have a conversation around the subject. And it still happens to me, that I can walk into a pub, I can walk into a cafe, I can walk into a restaurant, and people look at me and I get looked at in different ways. Like, people look at me and they see a sign of strength, or people look at me and they see a sign of somebody who could be vulnerable to them, because I've given this knowledge to people that could make me a target. It could make me weak. But what I like about that is actually it gives that subject, or it brings that topic to the fore of people's minds. And if they start having that conversation about it, and is to realize, for me it's a big thing to realize that actually I'm a living example of a real life version of stigma. When I first found out that I contracted HIV, I genuinely thought I was going to die, because I had no other knowledge around this subject apart from HIV led to being lonely, being sad, contracting AIDS, and dying. That was all I knew. And now I realise, as you said, like on a global scale, I realise I'm actually in a really privileged position. You know, I live in a country where the law defends me against hate crimes. I have access to treatment. I have access to knowledge, which really empowers me. And I think what's really important then is that just because I'm in a privileged position of knowledge, as much as that enhances my life and I live a great, fantastic life, I think it's really important that everyone, whether they be living with HIV or friends or family of people who are living with HIV, take that knowledge and they create a safer, better environment for everybody else to live in. And that's not just, you know, within your street or within your house or within your, you know, kind of county. I think it's about globally realizing that as a community of people, as a society of human beings, you know, this is a very important subject that has the potential of affecting or touching all of us within our personal lives or degrees of separation. So I think everybody needs to have this power and this knowledge, because I say to people, like, I'm not trying to create this better environment for people living with HIV just because I live with HIV. Yeah, that has a part to play with why I'm here. But I actually think that everyone, regardless of your characteristic, can play a part in creating a better society, because everybody can and potentially will be affected by this virus. So it's important that everyone knows about it. Everyone has this knowledge. Everybody has this power to be able to have a conversation around it. And I think that's something that will eradicate the stigma around it. Because stigma is just a lack of education. You know, it's just what we think we know, but the reality of it is something completely different. Yet we don't open our brains up to it because we don't expose ourselves to it. You know, we don't go down the pub and have a chat about it, or we don't sit down and have a meal and have a conversation around it because we don't want a table next to us to you, or we don't want so and so over there to hear about it.
So if people again watching this, if they don't feel as though, because like HIV testing has gone down 30% during COVID, I think. I think that's right. And to be honest with you, that doesn't really surprise me, right? People are being forced or needing to test themselves for COVID sometimes on a daily basis, other times weekly, but it's a lot. So with HIV testing week, how do you encourage people? I mean, you obviously turn around and say, look, you've been tested so many times for a different virus constantly. How would it be more comfortable or easier to now be able to get tested? But I think, again, part of the stigma is people don't want to turn up at those clinics to get tested because then they might get given that look. Can you share a little bit about what that feels like, what that felt like for you, and what part of what the solution is? And of course, Terence Higgins Trust and numerous other organisations are putting out home testing kits, which I think is amazing, and it's so easy and quick to do. But that feeling of knowing that you need to get tested, or wanting to get tested, or friends of yours. We're in that fear of going into that place and being seen walking in and walking out. How does that feel, and how can we find a solution to it?
Look, I'd love to sit here and say and empower people to be able to go and do it and say that it's okay. But the reality is, for me and for millions of people, it's a daunting experience to walk into a sexual health clinic in the first place. You know, I've always kind of tried, you know, since I've come to terms with everything, you know, why we feel okay to walk in the dentist, or it's okay to go to the hospital for another ailment, but to walk in a sexual health clinic carries this really big shame around it. And also what the fear is you're going there to get tested and there's a potential of it being positive. So in a way, it's easier to hide from that positive result, because when you get that positive result, you feel like you're going to have to then deal with the stigma, deal with the misunderstanding that comes around from being it. But from when I tested to now, it's so much easier now. Like, it's so simple to test now. In the privacy of your own home, you can get tests sent and get done in your own home. You can go to clinics, you can go into drop-in clinics, you can You can go in a room on your own, and even though it's an isolating experience, I feel what people need to know is that you are never alone on this kind of journey of testing, because you think to yourself, right, if I'm at home on my own and I have this positive test, yes, I've had the anonymity of being at home, but then I have the isolation of not having anyone to talk to. If I do have a positive test, or the same in the sexual health clinic, is, I don't want to discuss if it's a positive test. I don't want to discuss it with the nurse, especially in, for me, well, a lot of people being tested in clinics where they feel like they're going to be known. It's this whole fear of the positive result then, of thinking, is somebody going to read my face? Is somebody going to see my test and see my name on it? So there's this huge fear around the testing that I feel is very quickly eradicated if we understand the processes of testing, and also understanding that testing is really, really important, because the sooner the diagnosis, then you have better long-term health. So the sooner you find out if you're negative, or the sooner you find out if you're positive, then the sooner you can start treatment. If you leave it too late, then it can have circumstances that are irreplaceable, irreparable.
Yeah, no, I hear you 100%, and I'm thinking that, I think in life in general, so many people sometimes are like, you know what, it's better just not to know. And then other people are like, I just want to know. The not knowing is the worst. What was it for you?
For me, it was an unexpected diagnosis, because, and again, this is a very, very scary thing with me, is I felt fine. Like, I thought I felt absolutely fine. I was training hard, I was working hard, I felt happy in life. And one of the scariest things that happened to me was when I started my medication and my viral load started to come down, I realised that actually I'd been ill. And I didn't realise I was ill, because I started to feel better.
Yeah. You got used to feeling 50%. Sometimes we wake up and we feel like, I feel like I got a cold coming on, but I'll just get through it. Or sometimes you wake up and you're ill. With me, it was this thing where I was waking up and I felt like I was okay and I could just get through it, because I thought maybe I just had a little niggle, or I was training a bit too hard, or, I know maybe my lifestyle wasn't as clean as it should have been, and I was having a couple of beers too many and just make an excuse for everything else. But the reality is that it was affecting me without me knowing it. And whenever I speak to people who are afraid of getting tested, then I understand the fear, but also it's kind of really important that they realize that they need to be tested as soon as possible if they've put themselves at risk, because the sooner they start the treatment, the sooner they become undetectable. As we know, and undetectable means you can live a very healthy, happy, normal life, and you're also not at risk. You're not putting yourself at risk to sexual partners in the future when you become undetectable as well. It is. It's a completely understandable fear, but as you quite rightly said, and I could never imagine being in your situation, how that must have felt. But for everybody else, again, it's like, the scary part might be the finding out and the knowing, but if you don't find out, the incentive is find out as quickly as possible, because then you've got a higher chance of survival, right?
Yeah, and I think that
medication, then it's like then everything changes.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think it's scary. Again, it's scary at the start, and this is what we need to kind of eradicate, like with the stigma and the misunderstanding around it. Is it wouldn't be scary if you understood what living with HIV in 2022 is. Then it would not have that fear around it, And if we created an environment where we felt everybody was knowledgeable, where we felt there wasn't stigma around it, where we felt people weren't misunderstood around it, then that's the way of eradicating the fear getting people tested. I know one thing we do at Tackle HIV is we created at www.tacklehiv.org, right? We created a website because I was really passionate. Because one thing I did was I went on, one of the first things I did, I went on the internet and I Googled HIV. And it's one of the worst, because there's so many myths out there. So we wanted to create this platform which, with like Vive Healthcare and professionals, is a knowledgeable platform which can be trusted and has the information that people can rely on to kind of empower them to feel like, okay, no, I am empowered to be able to go and get tested because I understand that whatever that result will be, I understand the consequences.
I mean, you went into there looking for answers, and you probably came out with more questions.
Yeah,
I think it doesn't really, it kind of defeats the whole object. But Gareth, like, what is your daily and weekly routine now living with HIV on medication? Like, break it down, simplify it for people out there. Because to be honest with you, can you be honest with me? Like, if you didn't know your status and you weren't on medication, would you be around now?
I don't know for a fact, but I very much doubt that I would be. And I go now. I've gone from, the potential of not being around to somebody who is unbelievably active. And in fact, you know what? I feel like it's kind of done for me. It's given me an appreciation of life. Like a real value that maybe I took for granted before. Maybe I just thought, it was my right to kind of be here. And I feel, I take a moment at 6 a.m. every single day. My alarm goes off. I take my HIV medication, which is one tablet, and I feel that my day then begins. I'm very active. I go to the gym. I work as hard as I possibly can. And I think with that appreciation of life, right, comes this sense of not being selfish, just to think, right, okay, I appreciate my life. I have what I have. But also, do you know what? I want other people to have what I have. I want other people to feel empowered. I want other people to feel like they can talk about it, like they don't have to live in silence. So as much as I've created this amazing life for myself out of something that I thought would be a life-ending condition, it's actually turned into be like a life-affirming condition that I feel I want to be able to share with everybody, because I don't want that selfishness that I would feel if I just thought, you know what, this medication is for me and it's all about me. It's not. I feel I rely on medication to stay alive, and then by being alive, I rely on creating experience in my life to be able to thrive, to be able to live it to the maximum. And I feel everybody, in the community, should be allowed to have that opportunity.
At the beginning of this conversation, you said that people view you as vulnerable, and then other people view you as strength. You do realise that vulnerability in today's world, more than ever, is a show of strength. Is the definition. Yeah. You are the definition of strength, right? Especially through your sporting career and your Ironmans and everything else insane that you've done. But that doesn't mean that you can't be vulnerable. In fact, there's even more of a reason for you to be vulnerable, because the power that you're giving to other people is immense. And you know that, right? Everything that you've done throughout your life, but especially since finding out your status and like owning it, right? Just what you said to me, you're like, I just feel now so empowered, and I'm not satisfied with just my life being sorted. But my life now is, I now have a purpose and an ability to be able to make it better for everybody else as well. Yeah. That is huge.
Thanks, bud. And I want to ask you one question quickly though. Is I know, right, and I have a clear purpose as to why I do this. Now, you are somebody who is on a global stage. I think you show strength against discrimination, against stigma. Like your sense of equality for just about everything in this world is really at the forefront, I think, of what represents you. When it comes to HIV, and obviously, the great work that your mother did, what is it that really drives you on this subject? What is it that makes you so passionate about being, an amazing ally? And I say ally from a lived experience, because, I happily tell everyone that you was there for me when I was in a very difficult spot with my journey. So what is it that makes you the strength ally you are?
Good question. I think once you get to meet people and you see the suffering around the world, I certainly can't turn my back on that. Then add in the fact that my mum's work was unfinished. I feel obligated to try and continue that as much as possible. I could never, fill her shoes, especially in this particular space, but because of what she did and what she stood for and how vocal she was about this issue. But it's the converging of all these different pieces, what the work that she was doing, trying to continue that, try to finish the job, right? But also once you've met so many people, heard people's stories, seen the suffering, especially, in Lesotho and Botswana, where I've seen it most, there is a way out of it. And if there's a way out of it and we know there's a solution, I'm like a typical guy. I just want to help fix things. So it's the needless suffering. It's not just about HIV. It's not just about the individual. It's about the family. It's about the kids. It's about your community and so on. So I think, again, I'm constantly looking for like the root cause of so much suffering, and rather than being distracted by the symptom. And with HIV, with the stigma as well, it can just reverberate and ripple across a community and cause so much pain when it doesn't need to be that way. And again, it's not necessarily always a simple fix for people, but the simple fix here is get tested, know your status, protect yourself, protect your family, protect your partners, protect your friends. And now after the last year and a half, even more so, right? Because it's become ingrained in us that that's what we need to do. We need to know our own status in order to be able to keep other people safe. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it does very clearly. I think very clearly, and it's nice that I'm on a public platform to be able to say thank you, not from me, but from everybody in the world, I feel, who is living with HIV or affected by HIV, because having advocates, having allies when this can be such an isolating, such a lonely virus to live with, is sometimes enough. It's sometimes the difference between getting tested and not getting tested. It's sometimes, sadly, the difference between life and death. So I, as somebody who lives with HIV, feel like I have the ability to have the platform to be able to say thank you for everything you do, but
no, well, thank you to you. Like, geez, look at what you've achieved throughout your career, but especially in the last few years, like where you were and where you are now, and how many people are so grateful for that. You're saving lives every single day just by being out there and living. Like you're saving lives by living and serving your purpose, and that is truly epic. So again, in almost saying to you, I will always throw in whatever support I can, and we got to continue the conversation. We have to.
Yeah.
Just learning. I mean, someone said when originally came up the idea of like, why don't you get tested? I thought, you know what? Tell me, how much of a difference is it going to make? They said, it makes a huge difference. And then when I did it, Terence Higgins Trust said that their requests for testing kits went up 500%.
500%, yeah.
Just by getting a prick in my finger, and that was it. That's all it took. So how many people like you and I are out there who are like, I don't need to know my status, or I know that I'm fine. It's like, great. This testing week, especially in the UK, wherever you are in the world, go and get a test. Let people know that you know your status. Do it. It's an amazing feeling, and it will undoubtedly save a life, or at the very least encourage someone who is living in fear to come forward and get to know their own status, which in turn will save a life.
Yeah, because I know I got things here that you can order a free HIV test kit to do at home via www.startswithme.org.uk. So that'd be great because testing week starts on the 7th of February. So it'll be a very good timing for us to have this conversation. But thank you.